Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's watch.
So I said, okay, I will tell her. I don't know, for me, just coming and meeting you is validation, I guess.
There's a lot of us. I mean, there's 9 that I know of off the top of my head.
Are you serious? The situation with me.
Okay, so Mary, this is like later in season 11. Mary is meeting up with another victim of Sam, the catfisher. And Mary said that this woman told Mary that you're being catfished. And that makes me wonder, how did the other woman find out that Mary was even talking to Sam? We also heard that from Mary's perspective in the beginning, it was a friendship with this Southern gentleman, as she put it. And then it was just friendship. And then Sam introduced Mary to her best friend, I think Linda or something. And that was, in all likelihood, the actual catfisher, right? And that it was just friendship, and that Mary in the beginning thought, hey, I'm going to introduce this friend eventually to the family and to Cody, because just a friendship. I really like this person. I think I want this person in my life. You know, I'm sure it happens all the time, or hopefully, that the adults have friendships that they develop and then they introduce them to the family. So in the very beginning, it's credible that that was what was happening for Mary. But given the description we heard from Mariah, now maybe Mariah was distorted or something, but the way that Mariah talked about it, it sounds pretty clear that it transitioned into a different part of the relationship. Now, I suppose Mary would say that was only because I was being abused. I was being threatened. And, you know, that is a possibility, that it was never romantic for her until it became a threat. You know, it's possible. I would have to hear more information to conclude that conceptualization, particularly from Mariah, I guess. But, and you know, it doesn't really matter. I'm just a random Yahoo who's watching a reality TV show. Doesn't really matter what my take or opinion is on their situation. Their situation is what it is. I'm going to hope that they had long conversations about it off camera. But anyway, so then we're learning from this other woman that she knows that there were 9 victims of Sam. And yeah, it just makes me wonder what it was looking like. How did they know that? How did they contact the others? Or were they being introduced to each other? I don't know.
Me and this catfisher was just last year. It was a lot longer ago than that for Cheryl. I mean, the fact that she knows of 9, just personally herself, it blows my mind.
And then, you know, the other thing is, like, is Cheryl another catfisher? Because it's not really catfishing, right? But it's manipulative. I mean, if I were Mary, it'd be a question. Let's hope not. I'm going to assume not.
Myself, it was like, no, I guess it's just one person, and that was really kind of hard to wrap my head around. She wasn't able to get money from me. I don't know if that's what she was trying to do. I don't know what her plan was with me. I don't know how she makes her voice sound like a man. I mean, for a long time, I thought that she just had hired some.
Okay, we're getting some more details, and they talked about how there were lies about, or at least assumed lies about, leukemia and colon cancer, that Sam said he had leukemia, and Lindsay said that she had colon cancer. And yeah, psychopathic con artists will typically do this. I actually had a personal experience. I wasn't the target, but of people very close to me were the target of the psychopath con artist, and he claimed that he had cancer. And it was before the internet, so I couldn't look it up, and I didn't know anyone to ask. And I was young, you know, I was 22 or something, and I remember he claimed that he had cancer, and that he had discovered that he had cancer while we knew him. You know, he initially didn't know, and then anyway, and he started going through treatment. He was in all likelihood lying about it. And then he showed up the next time we saw him, and his head was bald. And I remember seeing stubble all over his head and thinking, is that how that works? I just didn't know. Now, some people will shave preemptively because they know that they're going to start losing it. But anyway, looking back, it was a con job, but it was a bad one. He was actually the psychopathic con artist was horrible. Typically on the internet, when someone says a narcissist, this is actually who they're talking about. They're referring to a psychopath, a con artist, someone who is, trying to mooch off others, who is trying to manipulate and knowingly lying and knowingly tricking and love bombing and gaslighting, all this stuff, abusing. Anyway, these individuals are very rare, by the way. In all of my life, in my personal life, I've come across one. In my professional life, I've come across more, of course. But anyway, so we're hearing more clarification, and Mary was saying that that Lindsay and Sam kept asking about their business stuff and, the businesses that the family were trying to get off the ground. And it was at the point where Mary said, okay, but I have to have you sign an NDA so that I can share this information with you. And then the NDA did come back with their signatures, but in all likelihood, those are not their real names. But who knows? And then I was wondering, is this what it was about? Was it to try to get money through that? But then we're hearing that, they never asked for money. Lindsay and Sam, but we'll just call her the catfisher, Lindsay, never asked for money. Now, maybe it was a long con, or Lindsay had been catfishing a lot of people and had just not gotten around to trying to put the screws to Mary to extract money. But typically, the con artists and the manipulative people who are looking for money. Now, I'll finish that sentence. Sometimes halfway through, typically, what they will do is they will initiate that campaign pretty early. But having said that, there's a possibility that the catfisher has a pattern of waiting until they get their hooks in. I don't know. Anyway, there's another possibility that the individual, so a while back I was like, is this just some fan who just decided to catfish on that basis? And it was their only time they had catfished, but it sounds like no. And it sounds like a chronic serial catfisher, which leads me to believe that the person is psychopathic and lonely and has traumas. Often psychopaths have a lot of traumas, like really extensive traumas. And although we don't have sympathy for them in their exploitation and harm of other people, we do understand, we have a conceptualization as to why, because so many psychopaths will shoot themselves in the foot. They're not the way that they are in the movies. It's not Hannibal Lecter, typically. 99.999% of people who suffer from psychopathy are in and out of prison because they're getting caught so often. Or at the very least, when they're conning people, like the psychopath that conned my friends, it became known very easily. It wasn't hard to figure out. And once they figured it out, my friends figured out, actually, now that we know, we can actually get him because he has his car parked in my garage and I have the key to the car. I can sell the car to get my money back and stuff, and the con artist just, and the con artist also left a lot of evidence behind, like letters and journals, stuff like telling a broader story of everyone that he had been conning in different areas. He would move to another city and then con those people. And so it gave my friends the ability to reach out to those people. And and there's a woman who was engaged to him and they were about to get married and then he bolted. And he also didn't extract very much money from my friends. In a lot of ways, and this isn't typically the conceptualization, if you just look at the overall gestalt and the overall picture, the con artist that was conning my friends and Sam or Lindsay, it's possible what their goal is friendship. And that isn't typically the conceptualization, right? Because it makes them look more human. Obviously, if you're conning someone, you have to be trying to extract money or sex or something, right? But psychopaths are often very lonely. And the way that they're talked about, they are this alien species who don't care about attachments, but they actually do care about attachments. Sometimes in a more deeper but more screwed up way because they've never had any, because that's what was, their early childhood was like. So it's possible, at least I'm adding it to the hypothesis list, that Lindsay wanted companionship in this very twisted way and would con people in this way and developed the con over, a long time ago and figured out that it worked and was looking for friendship, but also was very busted up inside and angry about things in life, given her relational traumas, and was simultaneously getting friendship while also victimizing other people, and might have been gaslighting and threatening and abusing the victims, because eventually it would transition to that, right, for Mary and the others. Not because that was the point, but because the catfisher, Lindsay, would just interpret like, hey, you're betraying me. You're going to leave me. I'm going to lash out. It's a possibility. It's also possible that Lindsay isn't a psychopath. It could be some other personality issue. There are others. Not narcissism, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. It's not, it could be, but it's not of the short list that I would think of. Anyway, so it's interesting. And Mary, now maybe Cheryl will say, well, she did extract $1 million from me or whatever. But Mary's saying, she didn't get any money from me. I don't know what Lindsay's goal was. But from the set, Mary also talked about how Sam was like, you got to go on this road trip with Lindsay to California. And Mary was resisting at first and was like, okay, fine. So this is essentially Lindsay, in all likelihood, saying, I want to go on a road trip with you. Please, do that. And she can't ask directly. But anyway, so she goes on this road trip. And then it was then that Mary figured it out that, wait, I'm being catfished and you are Sam. Probably because of just the casual conversation, maybe a slip of the tongue by Lindsay. And Mary's like, oh, and Sam, Lindsay became intimidating in that moment to Mary, and it was really scary, which you can imagine being stuck in a car with someone like that, where all of a sudden you're, oh my God, you are a monster. I'm in a car with a monster, it'd be terrifying. So it could be that if Mary had never figured it out, or it had taken longer, that Lindsay would have used Sam to get Mary to be friends with Lindsay, and Lindsay just wanted to go on a road trip with someone and just to have a pal, It's a possibility.
Some guy, because I knew that there was no Sam, but I knew that she was behind everything.
Did you ever think that she was stalking you, like really stalking you?
100%. I know it. They were totally tracking me. Both Lindsay and Sam would tell me what I was wearing on particular days. Exactly what I was wearing.
Yeah, I'm wondering what Cheryl will say. I'm wondering if Cheryl will say, it's possible that they were just making you, that Lindsay was just trying to trick you into thinking that she was stalking. Now, could Lindsay stalk? Yeah, and does it really matter either way? But I throw this out there because, and I talked about this before, that some people are just really good at cold reading others and making people think things. Typically it's like psychics or speaking with the dead, this kind of thing. But stalkers can do this too. And sometimes they want you to believe that they're watching, because then that gives them more control over you because you're more scared, right? But they actually aren't watching and they don't have that much power. And so it's possible that, I'd be curious if Mary could give more information about what was being said. Because, it's possible that Lindsay would say, I know, by the way, I like that new shirt you had on recently. And it's, it's kind of non-specific, right? And Mary's like, oh my God, I was wearing a new shirt recently. You know what I mean? Or was it, I saw you wearing that polka dotted shirt with those jeans and I saw you at the McDonald's, then it'd be harder for someone to guess those kinds of things. So I'm curious if we're going to hear. I don't know why I care, but I say this because if one, someone's trying to con you, and two, someone's trying to trick you, this is a tactic, and you just want to be careful about allowing them to convince you that they are watching you when they're actually not. Now, obviously, if you're being harmed, talk with a specialist. There's a lot of different kinds of people that you should be talking to and get support. Maybe even call the police, of course. Don't just try to deal with it by yourself.
What my hair looked like, where I was. I was in a store once, and Sam called me and said, are you at such and such store?
The other thing is I think we have a strong suspicion, and Mary does too, that Mary had software installed on her phone so that Lindsay would be able to monitor the phone, which has GPS, of course. So there's that, and the camera. There is software that can be that extensive on your phone that you can remotely turn on the camera, turn on the microphone, look at the GPS, look at everything, right? So that would give everything could be explained by that. And it would be so easy to get her to do this, right? If she is trusting of the two of them, of Lindsay, and Lindsay's like, hey, there's this new app, you should check it out. I'll send you the link, and then they're in, right?
Or Sam, that I would be sorry. I didn't know if they were going to start messing with me personally, physically, if my life was in danger. When Lindsay was at my house, she was on my computer. I don't know what she was doing. I felt that I had to do everything.
Okay, well, there you go. Especially if you have the Apple universe going on, where you have an Apple computer and an Apple phone. I'm imagining that you could actually install software on the computer that would end up, dealing. I don't know this, but I'm just looking for any, but it could have also been what I was saying earlier, where she just got Mary to install some software on her phone, and Mary thought it was fine. But to say that, yeah, Lindsay was on my computer and I don't know what she was doing. Wow. Yeah.
Well, so it makes sense, given, where you guys were at and being moms and having that loss, that could come about, that situation could arise. And I think that there's no way I'd be able to diagnose, and I've never met this person. I don't even know a lot of the details, but I think someone who may have a personality disorder.
All right, so to catch you up, we are still in season 11, and Mary and Cheryl, both having been catfished by Lindsay, are going to see a therapist, not for therapy, according to them, but to help to potentially understand Sam and Lindsay as to why someone would do this. And they are telling their story, and this is edited, so who knows, but the clinician is now saying that they can't diagnose from afar because they haven't assessed the individual. And now she's mentioning a personality disorder. So let's hear this.
Not talking about anybody in particular. They may have been in a situation where there was some neglect. They had to figure out their world completely on their own and know that manipulation and getting people to do what they want was actually the way that they were able to survive.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hypotheses that I've talked about already, I think. And that isn't necessarily a personality disorder, by the way. That could just be a defense or a pattern or a habit, but it could be a personality disorder. there isn't a particular personality disorder that's associated with this. I guess generally you could say, well, I don't know. Let's hear more of this.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
I would say you don't need to get it,
Yeah.
right? I think keep looking at how the way you think about her, how that might impact you, you know, and just keep looking at that piece of it because you'll probably never know.
This is just one of those things I just have to accept and move on.
Yeah, we're seeing an edited version, but it can help sometimes to have a conceptualization. I've had clients come to me for this. It's arguable that it's not actually a client, it's a consultation meeting. Someone wants to understand the possible reasons as to why someone in their past did what they did. And I'll say the same thing, I can't diagnose from afar, but giving your description, you know, could be this, could be that, but who knows. And with enough information, it can help, you know, because you go on the internet and you're not going to find good guidance, or even among clinicians online, you're not necessarily going to hear coherent, expert, sound information. So seeking out a professional in person might be the only way. And people have reached out to me before in this way. And it can actually provide some closure. It seems like it would be a fool's errand to find closure this way, but it can help. I'll tell you, for me, when I've encountered problematic individuals that have harmed me, to have my professional clinical way to conceptualize has helped a little bit. I don't know if it is a false sense of security, but it feels more secure to know that, oh, there's something about this person. It's not just anyone that can do this. It's fairly rare. Here are the signs. Here's the things to look out for in the future. And it's not personal. The person wasn't setting out to get me. They're suffering. And I guess maybe that's another part of it emotionally, is to know that the person who harmed me in all likelihood is suffering 100 times or 1,000 times more than I ever will. And I just happen to get into their orbit briefly and experience some of that suffering, but they're suffering greatly all the time. I can't know that, of course, but that's usually the case in terms of the conceptualization and the formulation that I'll have. So it can help, but anyway, so it sounds like the clinician is saying, yeah, I really can't say. And that's probably the responsible thing to do.
Her mind does not seem to work like mine does, or Cheryl's does, or so many other people. And so I will never understand it.
I mean, what do you think the purpose of this happening to you is?
You know, I don't know that this was in like some greater plan, that this was...
By the way, that sounds like an existential therapist. Just going to throw it out there just based on one question, who knows, but it sounds like an existential question as a part of existential therapy.
To say a lot of stuff that you really ought to be saying in here. And that often what you do is kind of put digs out at one another or put issues out to one another on film that really are going to be seriously addressed in here. It's funny because it's really something I've wanted to speak to you about.
This is interesting. I've often wondered about that as an observer on this YouTube channel from the outside. But I've also wondered if the therapists on these shows would also think about it and maybe talk about it. I would be talking about it if I were in Nancy's shoes. I'd be saying, how does the show and the fans and the producers affect the system? How does it affect what we're doing here? I mean, there's a camera right here. I mean, there are different styles of therapy and different styles of therapists, but I'm that style where I just want to at least acknowledge that there's something happening here, you know? So I'm glad that she's bringing it up, and I'm actually surprised that they even included it in the edit, because my perception is that they try to make it seem like the cameras aren't really there, you know? And any reference or any obvious statement that there are not only cameras, but producers and sound people and, all this kind of stuff, is to compromise the reality of the reality TV show. But yeah, so according to Nancy, what she has been observing and has been holding back to say, probably because she doesn't want to, I don't know why, but I can imagine how she might feel like it could open a can of worms or it could alienate the producers or anyway. But what she's saying is that she thinks that the family uses the cameras as an opportunity to let things out. But the rest of the time, it sounds like what Nancy is saying is that they avoid and take, shots at each other. They will be short with each other or mean in little ways, but they use the cameras and also maybe therapy with the cameras as a way. Because it sounds like, because I've been impressed with what looked like a family that is going to therapy, parents, couples. I guess it's like, in my world, it would be a polycule therapy situation, but this is polygamy. So anyway, I was impressed that they seemingly were going to therapy on the regular, but it might also be that they don't, and we're only seeing. Now it's better than other shows because in like 90 Day Fiancé, they'll be going to therapy, and the way that it looks is they go to one session and then that's it. But so it's not that, but it sounds maybe that Nancy is saying, I don't know if I include that clip, but she's like, now that you are seemingly more interested in reconnecting and using therapy, well, I'm wondering if you might actually commit to coming here more often, or at least talking about this more often, instead of doing it and then avoiding. And it would scan with a lot of the other things that I've heard and observed in this family, I think particularly with Mary, and Cody, that when in doubt, they just avoid. And even when they are being faced with it, and Mariah actually showed that she's following in these footsteps, that they will, if they have to face it, they'll say, well, I just have a lot to work on. I'm sure that's on some bingo cards when you're watching this show, is, well, we've got a lot of work to do. I'm going to have to work on that. And at first I thought, that's great. It's good language and true and great. Of course, yeah, it's a big deal. It's going to take some work. You can't solve it right here. But I'm also wondering if that's just their way of avoiding, that they say that to themselves and others and maybe believe it, but they actually don't do the work. They actually don't try to repair. Especially because as I watch season after season, there are very similar problems that they will identify and alert themselves to, and then say, we've got work to do. And then like 3 years later, in a later season, I will see evidence that they haven't worked on it really at all. And Mariah actually did this too when she was being confronted, or not confronted, but Mary was trying to get her to warm up to her. And Mariah said, well, I've got a lot of work to do or something. And I it's not a bad thing to say, but I wonder if it's just avoiding. So it's interesting to hear Nancy talk. Another thing I want to point out, I didn't show this clip, but Mary was clear in the session and in one-on-one interview that the susceptibility to being catfished, according to Mary, is not because of plural marriage. It's not because of polygamy. And they shouldn't call it plural marriage, because plural marriage implies it's genderless, right? Okay, plural marriage, that means a woman can have more than one husband? No, that's not what so you're talking about polygamy. It's very specific. Anyway, so, because I'm 95% sure polygamy refers to man with several wives. Anyway. And Mary was saying, and who knows, Mary doesn't know anything else. She was raised in polygamy. She's lived polygamy. So she isn't the best gauge of this. But according to her, she's saying that, if anything, the polygamy was helpful through this whole thing, because it provided a bit of a buffer or room for Cody to move away, but to come back. Cody could spend time with the other sister wives, and then once this whole thing blows over, then Cody could come back. But Cody actually said that he thought that polygamy actually made it worse, because if they were in a monogamous relationship, Cody was saying he would have been compelled to work on it faster because it would just be the two of them, right? And I think also Cody thinks that if they weren't polygamous, there wouldn't have been so much distance or so much opportunity for distance. The other thing that I heard Mary say was that she was already thinking, well, I don't know what Mary was referring to, but she's basically saying that the seeds of all of this were planted in, I don't know what season it was. I'm going to look at my notes, like early season. She said before they even met Robin. So that would have been, I think, before season 1, like just before that. Well, no, not, well, okay. So what Mary said was that up until meeting Robin, their relationship was on the rise. It was getting better. And then Robin came in, and then she's saying, she didn't say this like strongly, but by implication, she's saying, and then that was the last time it was good. And this whole time, I've just been so confused, and I'm thinking that they're confused about who agrees to this, because the way that they often will narrativize it anyway is that the women are the ones that are asking for their sister wives to join the family. They're the ones that reach out, like the story goes is that Cody, was not open to it and was about Robin and was saying, well, she's divorced. So then, we can't, it's a non-starter. And the sister wives, I think particularly Mary, if not only Mary, was saying, no, it's, just give it a try. Just give it a courtship and see. So you think, well, that's so why? But if you were on the rise in your relationship, I guess actions speak louder than words, because for Mary, when Janelle entered the family, according to everyone, according to Janelle and Mary and Cody, Mary did not react well to Janelle and went after her. And, the way they describe it is Mary would nitpick and Janelle would be quiet and just silently seethe, And then we hear about Robin entering, and so you're just like, what? Who? But that depends on if they actually know what they want, if they're in connection with what they want, right? When Mary was convincing Cody to be with Robin, that probably, who knows, but that could have come from a place of just trying to be a devout polygamist, right? Or being a pleasing wife. But that's not really what she wanted or what she needed. And then once things start to get distant, then she can't take it anymore. She starts to feel it and she starts to react, but not from a place of self-awareness of what I need. So there's a possible universe in which if we were there, a fly on the wall, watching all the interactions between Mary and Cody, we would see a lot of evidence that Mary was on board with polygamy and was even trying to get him to be more polygamous. But then when you look at her behavior, she reacted poorly to Janelle and to Robin, but then bonded with Robin. So anyway, but then Mary said that the seeds of the catfishing or the distance or the lack of satisfaction for Mary in the marriage was happening just before Robin had offered to surrogate for Robin, right? Which was season 4, in episode 1, season 4, according to my notes, which I think was filmed in 2012, according to my notes. Anyway, and I think we're in season 11 right now, which I think is like getting to like 2016, 2017-ish, I'm guessing. So it's been 5-6 years of Mary feeling distant. But I think given her presentation, Mary, I don't think she is in touch with her feelings very closely and or doesn't feel like she can express them. I don't know. But we're hearing that for Nancy anyway, she's identifying what I thought was true, is that they tend to avoid. But by avoiding, it's not really avoiding. You're just suppressing, and the feelings are there, and then they would manifest in nitpicking each other or being short with each other or being defensive or something. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.